Now, we know the Prime Minister ducked up to the Alice yesterday. He got the Northern Territory government to put on some restrictions on alcohol sales. He demanded more reports and action to come, and then he left. The trouble is he seemed to ignore that while there are huge and complex problems behind all of this, at the moment it's predominantly a law and order issue, a community safety issue. People are afraid to walk the streets in Alice Springs. There are fearsome break-ins and shops are stolen from, they're trashed and they're terrorised. But listen to how Anthony Albanese reacted yesterday when he was asked about Canberra sending Australian Federal Police to help out.
The idea that an Australian Federal Police officer, who I have the ultimate respect for, who look after my safety and the safety of others, it's a particular skills that they have. The idea that they have more improved skills than someone who's here on the ground in Alice Springs and the local Northern Territory Police, I'm yet to see anyone put that argument.
Honestly, talk about being stuck in the Canberra bubble where the AFP, the police see every day, are personal protection officers looking after them. Albo seems to forget that the AFP are also the day-to-day police force in the Australian Capital Territory. They also police airports around the country, as well as doing work overseas and fighting crime in cahoots with all the state police forces. And besides, it's not about special skills. It's obviously about putting more police on the streets to provide comfort and protection to citizens and to deter potential offenders from breaking the law. And then today, speaking to Sky News, the PM said this.
Look, if there was a request, but there hasn't been. The solution here isn't simply to lock more people up. That's not the words of mine. They're the words of the Assistant Police Commissioners who are dealing with this issue on the ground.
Well, there have been requests, not from the Territory government, we all know they're useless, but from the Mayor, from councillors, from local MPs and from the community. Do they not count? And again, it's not necessarily about arrests. It's about safety and crime prevention. Now, a couple of other worrying responses came from Anthony Albanese today. He simply had no response to why he hadn't acted sooner. Why back in June and July last year, when Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price and even his own new Labor MP, Marion Scringemore, begged him to stop the Territory scrapping alcohol bans in Indigenous communities, he simply ignored them.
These issues are complex. They go to, as well, the opt-in or opt-out system goes to whether there will be seen to be different provisions for communities and individuals based upon their racial background. And that is a complex issue. That is why we are dealing with this issue. Marion was very supportive of the position that I took and that the federal government and that the Northern Territory government took yesterday.
No explanation for his delay, just noting that his own backbencher backs him now. Now, you see, there's a bit of a problem here in that the federal Labor government seems to have been ignoring Indigenous voices just at a time it's campaigning for an Indigenous voice. I hope they realise this and learn from it. The Nationals leader picked up on it.
This is exactly goes to the heart of why we don't need a voice. We actually just need bureaucrats and leadership. We need leadership of changing the situation by politicians and taking their bureaucracy and sitting them around campfires, sitting them around town halls and having bespoke models to solve these complex problems.
Well, he tried, didn't he? But I reckon this is a pretty opportunistic argument. As I said last night, using the trauma of Alice Springs to say a voice would be useless is just a cheap shot because we've never had a voice. And this is what's happening without a voice. You can't blame the voice or a campaign for the voice for what's going on in Alice Springs at the moment. And while no one pretends a voice would be a silver bullet, likewise, no one could possibly argue that you can solve these problems long term without serious input from Indigenous communities. On this, Anthony Albanese is right.
What we need to do is to make decisions with Indigenous Australians and listen to them. And the reason why it will make a difference, the voice isn't the end. The voice is the means to the end.
Yeah, it's easy to say all this, of course. It's much harder to implement, much harder to get results, but you have to try. And of course, Indigenous voices must be heard. Sure, there has to be some tough conversations, but they have to include Indigenous voices.